Hi guys, in this tutorial we are talking about user administration and user management. You create systems and you create servers. These servers are to be used by people. And so how do we manage the people that use these servers? The first thing we are going to do today is to create a user. And the command to create a user in Linux is very simple, very straightforward. To create a user, use a command called useradd. That command is going to add a user to the computer. This is the same command across many Linux distribution systems. So I have fired up my Linux virtual machine, and here I have my Ubuntu server, and over here on the other tab I have a Red Hat server. Irrespective of what server you're logging to, we can go ahead and do this exercise together. Now we are going to create a user. The very first user on our system is going to be called John. So the command, I'm going to increase the font size, user add John. So I've added the user called John. How can I confirm? You can just write a command called ID. ID tells you who you are. I want to get an ID for John. It says John, John. You see? So we have a guy called John. His user ID is 1001, and his group ID is 1001, and he belongs to the group called John. So in Linux, when you create a user, that user is automatically added to a group. So if I create a user called James, James is going to be added to a group called James. And this user also has what? A user ID. We call it UID. Now, when you go to your local government office to get an ID card, you're granted an ID card, and the ID card you have from your government office is you over here smiling. It has an ID number, maybe 095291. Something like that. You have an ID number for that ID card that you get from the government. So every user you create on the system is going to have a unique ID number. That is what the system used to track the user, not just the names, but the ID number. And so when we went back to our terminal and we did ID for John, you can clearly see John has added an ID called 1001. So we've created John. John needs to log into the system. The next thing we need to do is to give John a password. So the command to give him a password is passwd, and then who are you assigning a password to? To a guy called John. There you go. And I hit enter. Now it's going to prompt me to repeat the password twice. So you want to give a complex password, a strong password, maybe 8 characters and above. So I'm going to give a password to John. Sorry, the password did not match. I'll correct it again. So when you repeat your password twice, it takes the password. So we're going to create another user. Let's create a user called Mary. And I hit enter. That's all. If you don't see an error message on your screen, it means the command was successful. Now I'm going to give a password to Mary. Passwd, Mary. And it's prompting me for a password for Mary. First of all, one thing I wanted to know is that I am able to add users because I have administrative privilege, right? I am the root user of this system. And as a root user, I can do whatever I want. I can add people. Now, how do you confirm that I'm a root user? If you look on my screen, you look here at the prompt, you see there is a pound sign. Anytime you see a $sign, it means I'm a regular user. If you see a pound sign, it means I am the root user. More dangerous, more powerful user. So if you look on that screen right now, we have that prompt. So I could not just create a user for John as anyone, but I had to be root in order to do that. So I've created 2 users, John and Mary. Now I want to tell you guys something about a directory in Linux. Remember when we were doing the Linux hierarchical structure, I told you that in Linux, there are certain directories that stores files, and I told you all configuration files are stored under the root in a directory called etc. So if you go in that directory called etc, there's another file there called passwd. This file stores the names of all the accounts you've created on that system. Every person, like remember we just created John, and we created Mary, and so if we go to this file, we are going to find information about John and Mary. They are stored in this file /etc/pass Let's go to that file and take a look, guys. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to cut that file. So cut /etc. On that root we have etc / passwd. So this file stores all usernames in Linux. If you're asking an interview, tell me the files that store the username in Linux, that is the file. Hit enter. There you go, and you can see clearly that I created a bunch of users, and some of these users are created by the system and not me. If you look here, I created a user called Mary. I created a user called John, and this is David. This is the very first user I created this account that I used to do my work. So now if you look there, that's John, David, and Mary. And you can see the user ID for Mary is 1002, the user ID for John is 1001, and the user ID for David is 1000. When you start creating users on a Linux box, your user ID begins with 1000. The very first person on the system, which is the root user over here at the top, if you look on the top of my screen, I'm going to highlight that right now for you, right here. This guy. That is the root user. What is user ID? User ID is 0. That's the user ID for the root user. So I'll continue to explain some of these things to you. Now, when you create a user in Linux, like we discussed before, he will have a home directory under /home. Remember when we did a Linux hierarchical structure, I showed you how Linux is organized. That we have the root directory at the top, and then under the root directory, we have other things here like /home, boot, bin, sbin, etc., etc. Right here we have also have etc. Under this etc, that's what I told we have that passwd file. Passwd file. And here on that home, because I created Mary is gonna have a home here called home/Mary. Because I created John, John's gonna have a home here /home/John. And because I created David, you'll have a home here, home David. That's how it keeps going. So if we create a new user called Mark is gonna have a home under the home directory, home/Mark. And in this file, etc password, we'll put information about Mark and Mark's ID. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna create another user called Mark. I'm gonna clear my screen, ladies and gentlemen, and we are going to write on. So I'm gonna clear my screen, Control. I'm going to do a user add Mark. Now I am not going to assign Mark a password. Hit enter. If I hit ID for Mark, you would see Mark has an ID of 1003. Okay. Now the next thing we are going to do is I'm going to go cut the etc password file again. Cut /etc/passwd. Once you hit enter, you can clearly see that we have a user called Mark, and his ID is 1003. We have a user called John, his ID is 1001. And if you look at the home directory for Mark is /home/Mark. The home directory for Mary is /home/Mary. The home directory for John is /home/John. And they're all using the bash shell, bin bash for their word. So don't get overwhelmed by that. It's very easy and very straightforward. I'm going to clear my screen one more time. And I'm going to go ahead, and now I want to go do a little bit more stuff. I want to see what are the options for user add, what we are doing right now. If I do a man user add, and I hit enter, you will see that these are the options. -B will give you the base directory, -C to add a comment. If you want to add a first name and last name for that user, you're going to use -C. And -D to define their user home directory. You want to give a different home directory. That's not /home. You want to specify another directory to be their home directory. That's fine. You use -D. You can use -E to define when their account expires. But don't worry about that. If you ever get to a place at work where you need to do those, you can come to the man pages and read all of that information. You have a -G for the group ID, and you have a uppercase G for adding to a secondary group. Like somebody can belong to several groups. But like I initially said to you, when you create a user, the user comes and he's given a group with his own name. So if we create a user called Tom, I'll repeat one more time. A group is going to be created called Tom. A group will be created called Tom. And Tom, sorry, Tom. And Tom will be added to this group. It's that simple. So I'll show you something again really quick. So let's go ahead. And let's say we don't want these users, we don't want Mary. I want to delete Mary. So I'll just say the command is simple. Userdel, I'll just type userdel Mary. And I hit enter. There you go, Mary is gone. Now I'm going to cd to the home directory, cd/home. Remember I told you all home directories are under /home. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to hit ls. Now you can see that there is a home directory for John, Mark, Mary, STB. However, we just deleted Mary, and you can clearly see that she still has a home directory. Why did the directory not go away? It's because Mary stores stuff in her home directory. Let's say if Mary left the company and another person wants to see the stuff she was working on, we need this directory to be around so we can check what she was working on. But let's delete another user called Mark. I remember I'm under /home right now. You can confirm that with a passwd. So I'm under /home. I want to delete the user called Mark. So I'm going to delete Mark right now. Userdel Mark. And if I do that, it will be deleted, but his home directory will stay. So if you want to delete Mark, including everything about him, you put -arrow. Userdel -arrow Mark. That will delete everything, including his home directory. When I hit enter, there you go. If I do ls, you see, before we had Mark over here, now there is no Mark, it's gone with the home directory. Now let's check if Mary still exists in the system. Remember we deleted Mary over here, userdel Mary. Now if I do an ID to confirm if Mary is there, Mary, I hit enter, there you go, there's no such user, even though the home directory was left. So we can just delete the home directory if we don't need it. I could just do rm/rf recursively. I want to delete what? Mary. MA. And I hit enter. We do ls now, Mary is gone, guys. So that is how you add a user, and that is how you delete a user. Now, I'm going to take this a little further. I'm going to show you how to add a user and add some other options. Let's say we have to add a user. His name is James Walker, and his username is James. So we're going to do user add. I want to add the first and the last name. I put -c to add a comment, and I'm going to put them in quotation mark. I'm going to put James Walker. And the name for the user, I could just call it James. If that's the username I want him to use. Or I could call it J. Let's use that as the username for the person, and I hit enter. There you go. Now I can give a password for J Walker. J Walker. The password, I'll just give a simple 4-letter fire. Enter. So when I give a 4-letter character, I say, hey, your password is too weak. But guess what? I am the root user. I don't care. I can do whatever I want. But best practice is to not make anything shorter than 8 characters. But I'm going to give you the same weak password again. I hit enter, and it's authenticated successfully. Now I'm going to test to see if I can see James Walker. ID J Walker. That was the name we created. Hit enter. There you go. It tells us that we've created a user called J Walker, and his group name is J Walker. He belongs to a group called J Walker. So that was quite easy. Let's say I want to give a specific user ID, because when I hit ID J Walker, you can clearly see ID J Walker. You can clearly see that his ID is 1002. Let's say that I want to create another user. His name is Stan, and I want Stan to have a specific ID. I want his ID to be 5000. So it's very simple. So you say user add. Now, hyphen, small u for the user ID. And then I'm saying 5000, that's the ID I want to give it to him. And the guy's name is Stan. Now hit enter. There you go. Now if I do ID Stan, you can clearly see that Stan's ID now is 5000. His group ID is 5000. And that's all we want to know about Stan. Now, let's go even further and add a bunch of these commands together. So, I want to create a user called Grace Danielle. Her username will be G Danielle. I will just call her G Danielle. And her ID will be 12,000. So I can say user add I'll start with the username I wanted to give. Remember -C column. The first name was Grace. The last name was Daniel. And we want the ID. That's small u for the ID. I want to make an ID 12,000. Okay. And then now we're gonna give her username G Daniel. We can make it that simple. And you can add a bunch of these options together. But the last thing that you always put is the username of the person you're creating. So hit enter. That's it. No error message means you were successful. If I hit ID, G, Daniel. Look at that. You can see the ID is 12,000. The group ID is 12,000. It belongs to the group called G, Daniel. Now let's say I made a mistake. Okay, so this G Daniel went on a vacation. She got married. She came back. She has changed her name. She doesn't want to be called G Daniel. She wants to be called G Baron. Let's say the husband's name is Mr. Baron. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to modify her account information. So if you've created a user in Linux and you want to modify that user, you can use a command called user mod. User mod. So I'm going to mod user mod. What am I trying to modify? The first and the last name. I put -C for comment. Quote. The name used to be Grace. Now it's no more Danielle, it's Baron. Grace Baron. And then I will put, I'm not changing the user ID, but I'm just going to put the username for the guy. Do the girl. G Danielle. Hit enter. There you go, it's modified it. I can confirm by ID. G Daniel. Look at that, guys. So you see her ID is still 12,000. Group ID 12,000. Now I can go into the etc/password file to confirm her first name has changed. cat/etc/passwd. And hit enter. At the bottom of this file, we can see clearly that the name is Grace Baron. Remember before it was Grace Danielle. I didn't show you that, but now it's Grace Baron. In fact, let's say she's angry and she's changed her name again to Grace Lobster. So let's modify her name again. User mod. I want to modify her name. C for the name, so comment. I'm going to call her Grace Lobster. What was her username? G Daniel. To make sure that the system knows what name is changing. Okay, so let's go cat plus etc/password file again. You can see clearly that her name is G Daniel and her name is Grace Lobster. Her username is G Daniel. And this is the ID. So you can modify. You can even modify their home directory or the shell they're using or their home directory. You can do all of those things with user mod. That's the power of user mod. Now right now, let's go ahead and delete Grace Daniel. User there. G Daniel. I'm deleting it. Her name, and I want to delete including her home directory. I'm going to put -R to delete everything about her. Hit enter. Now if I go ahead and cat etc/password again. Hit enter. You can clearly see that she's gone. She's nowhere to be found. She's gone. She's been deleted. So I wanted to know something. When you're working with Red Hat Linux, if you create a user and you automatically create a home directory for that user under /home. If you are working with Ubuntu, I'm going to go here on my Ubuntu server, and to confirm we're on the Ubuntu server, we're going to cat /etc/os-release os-release. So under etc we have this file called os release. Under roots, under etc, we have a file called os release. Hit enter. Well, as soon as you hit enter, it tells you, hey, this is an Ubuntu file, it's Ubuntu 22.04. So you can see clearly we're using an Ubuntu machine. I'm going to add a user in Ubuntu, and his name is going to be John also. User add John. Permission denied. Oh, permission is denied because I am not the root user or I have not used the word sudo. Okay, so I can say sudo user add John. It's going to ask for my password to make sure I have permissions to do that. But in other words, we're going to do something simple. I'm going to just switch to root. Sudo su to become a root. Put in my password. Hope I remember my password. Put in my password one more time, I forgot it. Yeah. Okay, this is my password. I'm logged in, and I'm now the root user. If you can look here, before I switched to root, if you look clearly here, I was having a prompt sign, the dollar. Look at the dollar sign. Now I have the pound sign. This pound means I'm the root user. You can see I'm the root here. Over here where I had the dollar, I was a regular user called stable. Okay, so I'm going to clear my screen. I'm going to add a user add John. Okay, and I'm going to hit enter. This time it's not going to say permission not denied or permission denied because I am the root user. I have the rights to do that. I hit enter. Okay, I've added John. If I do ID for John, take a look. Everything's there. Now, let's go to the home directory and see if John has a home directory. So if I do a cd/root and then home, and then I'm going to hit enter. Do an ls. I don't see anything for John. So unlike Red Hat, Ubuntu does not create the home directory for the user by default. Okay, so we know there was a guy here, John. But if you look carefully, he has no home directory. In Ubuntu, if you want to create a user and create the home directory by default, you would say, for example, let's do James this time. User add -m. That's you're telling it to create a home directory, and we're going to call it James. And if I don't go now, I'm back again. PWD, I'm under cd/home // home. We're doing ls now. You see clearly that now James has a home directory because when we're creating him, we use the option -m. In this Ubuntu server, you can literally do a man user add. A lot of the commands will be very similar, be the same. Very few things change, like the -m I told you about. In Red Hat, you don't have to do -m, you just do user add. It takes care of everything for you. Thank you for watching this. I like to create a few users and test them out. And in the next lesson, I'll be teaching you how to create groups and adding users to secondary groups. Thanks for watching.